am going to be your wonderful host this morning for this morning's Monday Motivation. I'm Robert Freeman, the Medicare trainer here for the NatGen team. Today, we're going to be doing somewhat of a little bit of a repeat, but not all of the prior weeks as we move into AEP season coming forward. So some of the material, some of you folks may have seen, some of the material you may have not seen, some is new, some is repeating from our Wednesday Medicare series as well too. Obviously, we're trying to get the message out heavily here with AEP just around the corner. I think today being September 10th, we've got just over a month to go before the 15th date rolls out and we get rolling on this year's AEP for Medicare. So with that said, we will jump into today. Basically, 2 weeks ago, if you were with me, because there has been a wonderful break in the Monday series because we had a wonderful holiday last Monday. But if you're with me 2 weeks ago, I actually shared something kind of neat with everybody that was online, is that I actually had an opportunity to go and do something here in our local area, in the Hillsborough area, that is apparently it's billed as the world's biggest bouncy house. The demand for it was so huge that they actually extended it a second weekend, and my wife and I actually just went out by ourselves. So we actually had taken some additional pictures, and as you can imagine, it is just filled with kids. So interestingly enough, though, there are many things as adults that you can do in this specific area. So believe it or not, the adults actually have just as much fun or more than the kids do. But I'll tell you, it's actually an amazing experience to be able to go in and play around in something like this. They actually have, and I was trying to get the picture up today and I didn't really have as much time to do so, but they do have something that's similar to the Wipeout, the big balls that you jump on and you go from one to the next, and you basically just jump and you wipe out and you crash and burn every single time. But one of the funnest things that I continue to just do and do, and I don't know if it's the military that's in me or not, but I just had to try and continue that as many times as possible until I made it, which I think that I gave up after my 8th or 9th try. I didn't see a single person make it either, but jumping from one of those balls to the next, it is a lot more difficult than you can possibly imagine until you actually do it. But it's fun. You're in an environment where you're jumping on those and then you wipe out and you're basically just bouncing on a wonderful cushion of air. So definitely don't need to worry about getting hurt. I think the only thing you do need to worry about is jumping on top of someone else, because it tended to be quite busy while we were there. But some good things, over the Labor Day holiday that we did, and we had a good break here in between the last 2 weeks. So I hope everybody's back this week and nice and refreshed and ready to roll. So today's thing, as I mentioned at the start, it's a little a bit of a repeat from the prior weeks, but again, it is highly important that we continue to emphasize the importance of the AEP season coming up here with Medicare just around the corner. One of the things that I personally really try to heavily get the message across with every individual that I tend to teach, either one-on-one or within group settings, is the fact that you really are trying to make a really good, positive, deep connection with each individual person that you're going to sell to, whether that be on the individual market, as far as an individual plan or a family plan or a Medicare sales plan. You're going to be wanting to take the time that you need to get to know that person. And obviously, you're going to be doing a full needs analysis up front. You're going to be gaining that rapport and gaining that connection from the start, so that you not only are going to obviously do what is needed for the client at that time and what's best for them, and choosing the right plan that's going to be able to suit their needs, but you're making a connection that's going to last, in essence, a lifetime of that person's medical needs, as far as any sort of plan needs. And again, whether that be Medicare or an individual family plan, it's not really their job to really remember you per se. And like Patricia's quote here says, it's your obligation, responsibility to make sure they don't have a chance to forget you. And I think that really speaks to the heart of the message of what I really try and get across when you're really taking that first step and you're diving deep and getting into the meat of what has to happen with the sales process with your individual client at that time. So, it's not really their job to remember you. It's obviously their job to make sure they're going to choose a good plan, and you're there to help guide them to choose that. But it's really your full obligation or responsibility to make sure that they don't have a chance to forget that transaction that you're making in that conversation. Because if they don't have You know, if they can remember you and they don't, and they aren't able to forget you, it's going to be something that's going to be even tenfold with those referrals and any sort of residuals as the months and the weeks move on and the years move on and they need to refer and renew. So you're going to get a ton of referrals from that. You're going to get the renewals every year and the trust that you deserve from that specific customer. So it is Motivation Monday, everybody. Happy Monday morning to you. It's September 10th here. It's about 5 or 6 after 8 o'clock. We are here on the wonderful, somewhat partly cloudy West Coast today. Oregon is definitely woken up this morning and living up to its name with a little bit of sprinkling. But, you know, personally, I love the Northwest up here. It is the perfect temperature and climate for me. I'm originally from the Midwest myself. I've lived everywhere from, you know, Illinois to Texas to Pennsylvania, Florida, California, just a numerous amount of places, and I've never been happier than up here in the Northwest. So, ironically enough, the background slide of the Motivation is a wonderful mountain landscape there, which I've always felt has been just a really good piece of a picture there for me to start my Mondays off, just really motivated personally myself. So if you're new to us this week, or if you're not new, what we generally are going to do is we're going to go over a tip of the week. We're going to touch on some real quick trends for today, and then we're going to really go into some of the sales leaders and a really a sales technique for the week as well too. Again, the sales technique that you might see some things that you had seen in prior weeks or during my Wednesday series, but even if you have it, it's always good for a refresher. And again, there is some new material that's going to be covered a little bit briefly today, so keep your eyes open for that as well too. So a couple weeks ago when Dan had actually stepped in and then I did the following week, there really wasn't too many tips that had actually gone on, except for the fact that we were really kind of you know, doing our shameless plugs for the upcoming training schedules that we're doing here as far as the Medicare team is concerned. But I did want to at least step back real quick and do one of the secondary tips that we had prior is that, again, there is a new open enrollment period that's going to be back this year from January 1st to March 31st. So it is something that's going to allow our clients to be able to make a one-time change. Not something that we're definitely being very verbal about in that aspect. You know, it's in case of, you know, that quote unquote buyer's remorse and, you know, something happens in the plan that they chose just really isn't going to be for them. They are going to have a really, really good opportunity for those first 90 days of the year this year to make a plan change if they need to. So, you know, let's say that they choose original Medicare and, you know, they just realize, hey, man, that Advantage plan was really going to be what I wanted. They're going to have the opportunity to make that switch, and vice versa, of course. So that's really something to keep your eyes out for if you get those callbacks after the first of year and they're just like, oh, you know, I totally made a mistake. I need to make a change. Well, you can step up and not only be the hero the first time of giving them a wonderful experience and making that connection and building that rapport, but you can be the secondary hero at this point and be like, well, hey, you know, I've got an option here for you. Looks like we'll be able to make a change. And again, something to just kind of keep in the back hip pocket for that. Not anything that you're going to want to verbally announce because it could lead to a little bit of confusion, but it is therefore an opportunity for you to look forward to once the beginning of the year pops forward. So real quick, as far as the standard tip is going to be this week, is just to let everybody know is that I do the normal Medicare training schedules on Wednesdays. I do them for a couple of our different entities. What we're actually going to be covering this week is we're actually going to start diving real deep into Medicare 101 of parts A and B. So we're going to have a really, really fun time this coming Wednesday. So definitely, you know, if you're not already signed up for that, go ahead and get registered. There should have been an email that went out. If not, I do send out reminder emails that will either go out today or tomorrow that will plug the upcoming series on Wednesdays. And then once you sign up once, you are good to go for that whole series. So even if you can't be one or another, you don't have to worry about signing up a second time. So we'll dive into parts A and B this week real heavily, and we'll have some really good, fresh and updated material for that. We'll briefly touch on some compliance points in that as well too, because compliance is always a very important thing to remember, especially within the Medicare product itself. Then of course we'll go into part C and D. We'll do a little bit of Medigap on the week of the 19th and some more compliance reminders. And then the series does repeat in case anybody wasn't able to make it for the 12th this Wednesday and the 19th the following. We'll do a repeat of that. And then as the 10th comes, about a week before the AP season opens up, we'll do a full review of the entire Medicare A through D. We'll touch on Medigap again and some of the Medigap plan points that are out out there, as well as do some compliance reviews as well. So that's something to take to heart is there as far as the upcoming series. Now, I do want to apologize. Unfortunately, we did not, after the Labor Day weekend, get any updated statistics. I deeply apologize for that. But the thing to keep in mind here, though, is at least from what I had seen from the prior weeks, is that our short-term medical and fixed benefits either were holding steady or doing really, really well and doing increases. NatGen had been crushing it for 3 or 4 weeks in a row with their short-term med sales, and VBA was leading, which, you know, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, they had already hit 4 weeks in a row. So if that stays with the trend that it's been going, VBA is going to be going on almost 2 full months there with about 6 weeks in the lead there. Similarly, on the supplement side, our accident, critical illness, and dental sales, they were either really holding strong and steady or some really big increases. We had Assurant taking the top spot about 2 weeks ago, and CBL with critical illness, and Golden Rule with dental. I think that they had been 2 or 3 weeks in a row. So, you know, a real great job pushing those supplements and those short-term med and fixed benefits. You know, similarly speaking, as far as the sales shout-outs were concerned, again, you know, I deeply apologize to everybody. I didn't have any updated statistics as far as today, but I do want to at least say, again, I looked back on prior weeks, and Dustin, Cody, and Elaine, you guys are just crushing it on the short-term side. You know, if things stay the way that they were, I know just about every other week we had kind of a swap between first and second. Elaine had popped up a little bit and then dropped down. So I mean, it was really, really close race with everybody, but everybody's doing an amazing job as the weeks have been rolling out. So I just wanted to give a real good applause to everybody out there. You guys are doing an outstanding job. Similarly, on the limited benefit side, we had Katya, Robert, and Andrew that had been in our top 3 spots. Those 3 had been kind of jockeying back and forth for the past couple weeks as well. So, you know, great job to you 3 as well as everyone else on the limited benefit side as well. Everybody's just out there pushing it and killing it, and just some amazing numbers that we've been seeing over the past month. So my hope in this is that generally sometimes if those statistics are a little delayed, I might get those towards the middle or the end of the day today. My goal would be then is to send out a wonderful great job email to everybody just showing who those leaders were. So keep an eye out for that in your emails today. If not today, probably tomorrow at the very latest. Everybody should get some updates on that. And then when we touch base next Monday, depending upon if that's myself or Mr. Dan G, we'll just do a real quick recap and give everybody some more props as the Monday rolls on, since we weren't able to really highlight you this week. We definitely always want to give some real good shout outs to everybody. So great job, everybody, on that. You guys are just doing an amazing job on all of this. So as we move into today's sales technique, what we're really trying to focus on here, again, with only about a month to go till October 15th when AAP season for 2019 rolls open, we're really just trying to make sure that we're focusing on exactly what you need to do to make sure that you're 100% prepared and you've got everything rolling. So what really needs to happen when October 15th comes is the only thing that you should really be focusing on is one of 2 things: either picking up that phone and starting dialing, or scheduling those one-on-ones and getting out there into the field and doing that direction. So really what this is really going to do is it's going to step up and start to prepare you for what you really are going to want to do ahead of time, and make sure all those bases are covered, so that again, when October 15th hits, all you have to do is it's smooth sailing and it's rolling as the weeks go on. So what we had originally started on our Medicare series here is we have a 4-part series that's coming up. So what we were doing originally is we had first done part 1, that it was a real good opening preparing for AEP with some just real basic marketing tips. About 2 weeks ago, prior to the Labor Day holiday, we did do a secondary prep, which focused really more on the marketing side of things. Today, we've got part 3 that we're going to be doing, which is going to be going over again the final preparation checklist to make sure there's about 8 things that you really want to look at prior to October 15th to make sure that you're really on the ball when that day comes. And then, of course, our wrap up in about 2 weeks here is going to really focus on everybody's favorite topic of compliance and making sure that you're on top of the compliance side of things for this year's AEP. Now, again, keep in mind is as each Wednesday's seminar goes and our webinar series is rolling out throughout the weeks, starting this Wednesday, even though we're going to be touching on parts A and B, we are going to be doing a little bit of compliance in there as well too. So that if you're a little shaky on sort of some of the subjects, we're going to really do kind of a really high level overview on some of the compliance points as far as the marketing side of things are concerned, and things that you can and can't say, especially when you're discussing the enrollments for the Medicare side. So when we actually started focusing on parts 1 and 2 of the series, we really, again, we're really just doing the initial steps for prepping and getting ready, and really kind of focusing on some of those marketing tips that you can do. We really wanted to make sure that you understand that time is going to be your most valuable resource, of course. Preparation is always key, and you always want to make sure that you're focusing on client retention, basically meaning that you don't really want to leave any money on the table. So that if you have those clients out there that do need to renew this year, or maybe that you just haven't touched base in, reach out to that book of business, and we're going to be focusing on that as one of the steps as well today too, since that is really a super important part of making sure that you're prepared and getting everything in line for this year's AEP. And then lastly, with the part 2 that we did just 2 weeks ago, we really kind of focused a little bit more on marketing and really looked at options for the internet, contacting centers of influence, and really just getting down and talking to people. As I mentioned about 2 weeks ago, verbal referrals actually tend to be the biggest driver of business. If you were with me, you would have heard me mention that I've been with a lot of different organizations, and I'm sure as you have as well, is that everybody has their own specific marketing plan, and some vary and some differ from one to another organization. But the organizations that I've seen that really have really good renewals and really good referrals are the ones that really just talk and they ask for the referral. That type of word of mouth, getting that out, is the best type of marketing that you can do. So just getting out there, not even necessarily setting up a marketing event yourself, just going to local community events and talking to those individuals in those centers of influence. That's really going to be some of the biggest drivers of marketing and really referrals that you can actually get. Besides that, secondary and almost equivalent to that would be the utilization of the internet. And that can be anything from social media on Twitter and Facebook, things like posting things on Pinterest, or even having your own website page and a landing page that you can direct people to. So those are some really of the keys as far as the marketing aspect is concerned. So going into today's part 3 is our final preparation checklist. And again, you may have seen some of this as the Wednesday seminars have been unfolding as the weeks have gone, and coming up this week as well too. But we really focus heavily on 8 main steps to making sure that you're fully prepared to get ready to sell. So that, again, all that you really have to do when October 15th comes is just pick up that phone and start dialing and start talking and making those connections. Doing those needs analysis that you need are going to be critical at that point. So you really want to make sure that you're focusing on the client and the customer at that point, rather than focusing on or worrying on, well, did I get my social media bill paid, and is my site up and running, is everything going? So I mean, getting this done now and preparing now is the key to success once October 15th rolls around. So again, one of those first steps is making sure that you're going to be creating that marketing plan. And like I mentioned earlier, you can do this in multiple different ways. You can be marketing yourself on a website or a landing page. Part of marketing itself as well is really kind of diving into the carrier sites and your quoting tools and making sure that you're really familiarizing yourself with that 100%. As I've stated in the past, you are your own best source of information. So the majority of the information that that you're going to be able to pass on, if you're confident in your carrier sites and your quoting tools, that's going to come out, and that confidence is really going to show when you're speaking with the client at that point. Make sure that you're really kind of focusing on your sig line for the email fields, making sure it's short and professional. I've kind of gone off on tangents on this before to not make them, massively, because 9 times out of 10 they're not going to see this information anyway unless they do want to reach out. So obviously just make a short, sweet little signature tagline there down for your email. And again, you really want to contact all those existing clients via email, via phone, just continue to let them know that you're still doing health insurance, and as well as those centers of influence as well. So as far as the entire encompassment of the marketing plan, that there are a lot of other aspects to it that you can really dive down into the nitty gritty of it. But those were the basic 4 or 5 things that you really want to make sure that you're looking at for that marketing side of things. Now, on the other hand, besides marketing, you have to be ready to sell yourself, and the only real way to do that is to make sure that you've completed your AHIP. So something nice that I've actually prepared this year that's brand new, and I've mentioned it in the prior weeks, and I'm going to have it available in the weeks as well too, is that if you have not yet taken your AHIP, I have a brand new AHIP Tips for Success guide. And there's actually going to be some handouts that I've already uploaded into the handout section of today's webinar. There is a PDF version and a Word doc version. There are additional forms that I have as well too, and I'm going to touch on that in just a moment. But the main thing to really take out of this portion of it, as far as step 2 and getting prepared, is to make sure that this AHIP is either already in the process or it already has been taken. So what you want to do is, if you're a first timer, you definitely want to go in there and get registered. You're going to need all of that information, your NPN, social, to make sure that you can get signed up and registered on the site. If you have already taken the AHIP and you're just going to be recertifying this year, excellent job, everybody. You're going to have a little bit of a shorter version this year, so that's something to look forward to. It's not going to be quite as long if you passed last year. There is a cost associated with it. About $175 is the standard price for that right now. I've been receiving a lot of helpful information for everybody, and I really appreciate that. I've heard that United right now has a $50 discount available. That brings it down to about $125. So definitely take a look at United's broker area as far as their information to see if that discount's still available. I don't know any specific amounts per se, but each of those individual carriers do offer those. So keep your eyes out. If you do see something, let me know. I'd love to share that information with everybody as well, because if somebody can save $50 here, that's $50 you can put into either generating more leads or generating some search engine optimization or some search marketing. So you can always use that money in another area to reinvest back into your own personal business. Something else to keep in mind, AHIP, you only do have 3 attempts. After that 3rd attempt, you're going to be sliding that debit card again or entering in that ACH routing information again. And I don't know about you, but I don't like paying $175 twice. So if you do have the availability and you are trying to take this and it's your 2nd or 3rd time and you're just having some trouble, reach out to me, reach out to your upline, reach out to anybody that's going to be able to assist you with this. If you can't get a hold of anybody, I have an entire training team at my disposal. And again, I am going to have some other documents available for you today. Quickly though, also make sure that you really want to hold on to those results so that you can transmit them to the carriers. So on to the document portion here. As I mentioned, I do have an AHIP walkthrough, which I've actually renamed your AHIP Tips for Success for 2019. Again, there's a Word doc version and a PDF version in today's handout section of the webinar, so feel free to download those and keep those. Something else that's nice that I'm going to actually have available for you, if you do need this information, feel free to reach out to me directly, and you can reach me at the training@ahcpsales.com, of course. Is I have actually the guides for each one of the study guides for each of the modules inside of AHIP for you. So if you really want to kind of hold on to those and keep those and prepare in advance, before you even have logged in, I have those guides available for you to look through and to scan through. So not only do I have this wonderful walkthrough that's going to give you some really good tips for success with getting registered and some really helpful hints of passing AHIP, but I also have those modules available for everybody as well too. So keep that in mind. If you haven't yet to take it or you're in the middle of taking it, reach out to me and I have that information for you if needed. So next step after you've already completed that AHIP is you're definitely going to want to get contracted with your carriers. Something nice is after AHIP is taken, you do have the availability to transmit your results to a couple of the top main carriers there, and that is actually shown to you down at the bottom of the after you've taken your final test and passed an AHIP there, that you have the availability to transmit that. So that saves a little bit of time there. But there are individual carriers that you do have to transmit outside of that process. So you definitely want to make sure that you're contracting with at least what we would suggest as the top 5 carriers. You can contract with as many of these or as little of these as you would personally prefer. Again, these are just suggestions. You can actually choose to work with any of the carriers out there. One of the hints that I like to give out is that you really want to check out your local demographic market trends. And when I say local demographic market trends, that's a huge phrase right there. I mean, that in and of itself is sometimes days and weeks worth of just looking through marketing trends and seeing what's been sold. CMS.gov is a really, really good site for this information to really get down to those trends. It does it down to, as I think the last time I saw, it actually dives even deeper down from inside of counties to down to cities and townships. So it really breaks that down into demographic groups and really kind of shows from the prior year where those sales were. So you can actually pop onto that CMS site or Medicare.gov, and they have all of those Excel spreadsheets and those demographic market trends there for you just to review. I mean, that in and of itself, just if you want to specifically look at a certain area of the United States or your specific area, or if you know, let's say that you're only comfortable with a certain portion of wherever you're located at physically, that's perfectly fine. These trends and these market statistics are going to be your best friend in that aspect. So those top 5 that we have shown here, the United Healthcare, Humana, and Aetna on the national side, obviously those are going to be the top 3 there. And then of course, Anthem and Cigna Health Springs on the regional side. But again, you know, looking at those local demographic market trends, those can change from year to year. But, you know, take the time to really invest, you know, maybe at least a minimum of an hour to look through those trends and say, you know, all right, so it looks like Medicare Advantage was really heavy in my area or in my county here. So you know what, why don't I get contracted with UHC's Medicare Advantage side? So that's definitely a really, really helpful, good tool for you to keep in your back pocket as well with all of these other resources. So once you've contracted with the carriers, and you get certified with them, there are multiple different ways to become certified with the carriers. Some of them just simply really need you to notify them via email to contact them. You can go online and take the certification that way. Some do require face-to-face, where you're going to be in sort of a seminar or an event sort of an environment where you're going to be with other individuals that are going to be certifying there as well too. And some even better yet, do a combination of both. They can be face-to-face and online. So really you want to just make sure that while you're looking into those individual carriers, that you look at their broker support and you try and really kind of nail down as specifically what they need for their certification. And when it comes for getting certified with these, really the same steps are going to apply for you as far as passing your AHIP with your certification tips. You know, you really want to just make sure you do one at a time. Make sure to focus on one, get it done, and then move on to the next. At least that's what I would recommend. You know, you can certainly choose to do that any personal way you choose. I like to do one at a time because sometimes if a carrier has an issue and maybe I'd forgotten or something else happens and I just, you know, something slips out of my mind, I'm only doing one thing at a time so that I can make sure that that stays focused. But on the other hand, though, I do have those days where I'm doing 50 things at one time. So, you know, it really can kind of go both ways. But the easiest way to make sure that everything stays in line is to really just try and focus on one at a time. You don't really want to wait till the end of this month, beginning of next month to get the certifications done. Hopefully, if you haven't already done so, you've already begun this process, already got your AHIP rolling and or passed, and already get the certifications going. If not, definitely make sure that you're getting on top of that right now. That is critical and key so that, again, when October 15th rolls around, you guys are good to go, and all you have to do is pick up that phone. You know, take your test, make sure you're reading, or take your time on the test, make sure you're reading all those answers, really kind of do it in an area that's nice and quiet so that you don't have any distractions. And then of course, when you get done, make sure that you save those certificates and so that you can transmit them to wherever they are needed at that point. And then of course, for some of those live events, you do need to make sure that you RSVP. So make sure that you get on the list so that you're invited to the event. RSVPs are very crucial and important. And I will be sending out additional live events for carriers in your local areas, depending upon the need at that point. I know that I have some that I'm coming out later today with that are going to be for some West Coast and maybe some of our central United States agents. So, you know, keep your eyes peeled for those as well coming over the next week or so. Again, you know, as I mentioned before, you want to make sure at the same time that you're simultaneously getting to know all those carrier systems, all the carrier sites, and all of those quoting tools, so that that's not going to be a hindrance come October 15th when the day rolls around and you are just ready to roll and pick up the phone. You don't really want to be fumbling around on the site and putting in an application, and then, you know, then that trust and that you know, that confidence factor that the client has in you might wane a little bit. and you don't really want that to be any sort of a hindrance. So getting to know those carrier systems, making sure that as the weeks and the days move on, that you're really building that pipeline. And what that means is really kind of not only looking at new leads, but making sure that you're expanding your current pipeline as well too. So reaching out to those individuals that you already sold to last year, making sure that they know that you're still in the business this year and that you're doing well, you're back for them this year. And if they do need to make a change and they want to do any sort of a thing as far as their renewal for this year, that you are there to serve them fully for whatever they need. And then of course, obviously, with the last step that we're going to need to put in here is to make sure that you're always staying compliant. Compliance it's a dry subject to teach for sure, but it is super, super important. And as the weeks go on, this Wednesday, we're going to dive into some of those initial steps to making sure that you're staying compliant and making sure that you guys are on top of any sort of marketing things that you need to make sure that you're aware of as the day goes on. So those are our main 8 steps for making sure that you're prepared. Obviously, the first 2 steps there, getting your marketing ready and getting your AHIP done, are the really 2 important things, so that when AHIP's completed and you start getting those certifications and those carrier contracts done, all that you need to do again is just pick up the phone, start dialing, scheduling those one-on-ones or those group meetings, and then going from there. So again, if you do have questions, as I mentioned earlier, you can definitely reach out to me at training@ahcpsales.com. You can call agency services 877-228-8773. And then of course, if you do have any suggestions or tips for any upcoming Motivation Mondays that you'd like to see, I'd really like to try and maybe, put in some other fun things that anybody else, that you might be lacking an area in. I would be glad to take those suggestions and include those in future Motivation Mondays. So that's all I have for the day today. Again, I'm going to pop downstairs here and talk to one of our other brokers that's in-house today that's doing some training, but you guys are always awesome to spend time with. I appreciate you taking a half hour out of your day this morning, and hopefully this gets you all motivated for the rest of the week to get out there and just really kind of push it this week. Again, remember, it's not the customer's job to remember you. It's your obligation and responsibility to make sure they don't forget you. So get that rapport going now, so that when October 15th and all those conversations come up, that they have the respect and the confidence in you that they need to make sure they're making the right choice. All right, everybody, that's my my spiel for the day. Again, stick with me for this coming Wednesday. We got some really good courses coming up. As Dan would put it, I'm going to do some shameless plugs for myself, but also keep your eyes open and eyes peeled for some email announcements that are going to come out today and as the weeks roll on from myself and the training team as well. So take care of everybody. Have a great week and have a great, wonderful rest of your Monday. Bye-bye, everybody.